What is that noise?
Is someone cutting a tree down?
It's like
or is there a herd of
Basically.
cattle?
No. So in addition to all the things, I'm at my brother's house who today told me they're like redoing his entire like landscaping thing. So I don't know how long this is going to last, but I'll be going on mute for that.
Like Lydia, I thought it was cows.
That was amazing.
It did really sound like a cow.
It did. Is that just in my head? No, who else is reacting?
Good question, Lindsay. I don't think it's only relevant to Y1 or Y2, but in the breakout rooms, we'll talk more specifically about how the different frameworks apply in each of the years. And so you can choose either one, and like you're more interested in learning about one versus the other. All right, so it stopped for a minute. Last week we encouraged folks to like spread the word and bring a friend to this meeting. So if you brought someone along with you, or if you were like encouraged by someone else to come, please let us know, because we're going to be putting folks into like a little raffle, so that folks can win little prizes throughout our time together. So let us. Oh man, sorry, I thought it was sharing. Thank you for that. And I'm going to go mute because the cow started. Does everyone see my screen now? Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So take time to add in the chat. Let us know. We'll be looking at the chat later too, to make sure that we grab everyone who either brought a friend or who's here because someone encouraged them to come. Welcome to our second Curriculum and Coaching Learning Lab. We're really excited to be here. Thank you for understanding and allowing us to shift our time from last week. As Rachel can account, it was a little stressful just sitting and waiting to see whether or not hurricane would be coming our way. And so really appreciated the time to be able to do things like board up our homes and get water and supplies and do all the things. So thank you for understanding. Today we're going to focus on 4 objectives, two which will stay pretty much the same throughout our time together, but which are the connect and collaborate. We hope that is true of every learning lab. Today we're going to specifically focus in on understanding how CRP along with other foundational works are integrated into the curriculum. I think this comes up for a lot of folks, and just trying to better understand how it shows up. What do we mean when we're talking about CRP in a curriculum? Or if you work with other stakeholders, sometimes they might ask about specific frameworks. And so we wanted to share what some of those are that we're thinking about when we're designing and when we're implementing our program. And then figure out, spend some time talking about key components within Y1 and Y2 specifically. What does that look like? So we're hoping that this will help folks who are directly working with PDs and fellows, but then also depending on your role, you might be asked questions, or you might need to like better understand what's happening and how we're aligning our program with our frameworks. And so I think that this might be helpful for a variety of roles within our organization. Rachel, I'm going to ask for you to keep track of if folks are asking on the chat. I don't have my chat up, so let me know if there are questions or whatnot, or just chime in. So we'll spend our time doing a little bit of what we're doing now. We're going to share just some foundational knowledge, and then we'll break out into groups where we'll get more hands-on and there'll be more engagement. And then come back at the end to ensure that we are having time for some regional collaboration and open Q&A time. So this will be a time where y'all can share some promising practices or ask questions, and then we'll wrap it up. I included the intro and the framing. Again, this was from last week, but if we have some new folks joining the call, this will probably be just like a stand-in slide for our learning lab, since we'll have people come in and out of this space, but thought it was important to just reground us in the purpose of our learning lab and how we envision using this time. And so we really want this time to be a space where we provide some mini training sessions, there's regional collaboration, and there's knowledge sharing from both the curriculum team and the training and support secondary team to ensure that there's more communication and an implementation. Y'all are seeing the connections between our two worlds, because that's how fellows experience it, that's how PDs experience it. So we're hoping that this space serves for that purpose. Okay, so we're going to start off with some engagement. Would love for each of you in your in the PowerPoint deck to review the next 4 slides and consider the following 2 questions. How does CRP support the development of the pillars of fellow success? And then how does social emotional learning and inquiry-based learning align with CRP? And we'll give you a few minutes to do that. And then we're going to come back and talk through this. So take the next 5 or so minutes to review the next 4 slides and consider those 2 questions. And when y'all are ready to move on, will you just put in the chat that you're ready, and then that way I'll know to keep us going or to give y'all a couple more minutes. Okay, sounds like we're ready to go. Thanks, Michael T, for the Spanish immersion there. All right, so I'd love to hear from folks your thoughts. How does CRP support the development of pillars of fellow success? Does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share? You can add them in the chat if you're a little bit shy and don't want to speak out just yet.
I could chime in.
Yeah.
I see a lot of the academic success in kind of like the content and application pillars of like self-regulation, academic approach, and college knowledge. And then I also see a lot of like, it seems like they're kind of like bucketed in that way where there's like the cultural competence piece that then discusses like self-knowledge and relationship skills. I think the social political or the critical consciousness piece, I think that's then becomes pervasive throughout, because then you have to like use what you know as you're navigating those systems and those institutions. And so that one is a little bit like more like ambiguous of like, oh, it falls in this bucket. No, it's actually pervasive in everything.
Thanks, Michael. Would anybody like to add to anything Michael shared? So, Michael, you pretty much took most of my talking points that I was going to add that I had prepared. So I think you're like what you shared is pretty on point. I would say the point you had around social political consciousness to me also rings true in that like when we're introducing students to this concept, like a lot of it is around being critical consumers, right? Just a lot of questioning. Why, how did this happen? Why is this occurring? What can I do about it? And that is just like a skill, like as you mentioned, that can follow through any content and any application, whether it's school or not. And so I think that is something that falls through. The other piece that for me is really important, and it's not necessarily in the slide around culturally relevant pedagogy, but when you read the books and the articles or whatnot, like there's this underpinning around like relationship building that underpins all of that, right? And so I think there's this aspect that in order to be able to fully implement CRP and to foster the development, further development of the pillars of fellow success in our fellows, there is that element of like getting to know your students and really understanding who they are and like having like love for them, you know, to ensure that you're bringing out the best in what they already bring to the table, right? And you're excavating some of that. So thank you for that, Michael. How about the other frameworks? How do you see those like aligning with CRP or not, or complementing the work that we're already trying to do?
Yeah, I think for the social emotional learning, like the empathizing component is like a big part of what students are being asked to do, like just in terms of like structure, like whether it's discussions or also you know, like through like the narrative 4 process that students are doing, and then just like what are they, like the topics, like for the CR, like the values, purpose. Oh, sorry, I'm looking at my wrong notes. The like cultural competence and critical consciousness. I think like those pillars of CRP is where it aligns most with the social emotional learning.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts from folks around that?
I agree with what Zach shared. One thing that is standing up for me this week is when we were in the small groups from the qualitative learning report session that Lydia so fabulously led on Tuesday. In our small group, we were talking about, there were some non-program folks in my group, and one of the questions came up when we were exploring the identity pieces, and they're like, how does that happen, though? Because, like, we're talking about how white PDs are less comfortable talking about race in the classroom, and how that, like, there's just a lot more resistance from white PDs from what we found from the research last year. And the non-program folks had some questions about, like, how do those lessons happen? Because if a resistant white PD is trying to teach me about my impression as a person of color, and like that like I'm going to check out of that. And so we explained how everything is set up in inquiry-based way, so that we're making connections and building on prior knowledge and experiences from the fellows first, so that it isn't that like top-down approach and creating a like super wide disconnect that you might experience from more traditional teaching.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And I think that is like the connection even between, to some extent, between social emotional learning and inquiry based, right? That it's a lot of like reflections and questions and ensuring that like you're building from a place of like knowledge that fellows are bringing, and allowing them to be sort of in that driver's seat a lot of the times. This also, I didn't include trauma-informed practices here, but that is another place that we are like leaning into as well. And so we know that students who are impacted by a number of traumas, like a lot of the time what's traumatic about an experience is that you don't have control. It's happening to you. And so ensuring that when we're developing our curriculum, we are empowering fellows so that they have choice, so that we're asking them questions, that we're giving them the opportunity to identify, like, what communities do I belong to? What identities are most salient to me? Like having them have a say in that, because oftentimes in other parts of their lives, they may not be experiencing that. And we want to make sure that we're giving them a space where they can feel empowered and hear their own voices, as opposed to ours or the teachers or whatever. So any other thoughts here? Nice. Cool. So we're gonna, so the idea here is that there are many frameworks that we can be pulling on, and I think we're grounding our work in CRP, but that doesn't mean that we're like absent of these other things. And so depending on who you're working with, the schools, the districts, or whatnot, it is important to have a broader understanding of what are some of the other frameworks that we're using, how are they aligned to CRP, because you're then better able to support your PDs depending on potentially like what's happening at their school, what's happening in their district, or depending on your role, if you're working with school leaders or whatnot, you might be able to leverage some of this working knowledge to help support the work that we're doing in our classrooms. So specifically, we wanted to then share with you, what does this mean for how it shows up in our curriculum. And so there are a couple of things that we thought we'd highlight. This is not like an exhaustive list, but these are the things that come to mind when we're thinking like, what are some quick highlights that would be helpful for folks to just fully understand, and not just understand that they exist, but like understand how they exist within our curriculum. So I'll give you a few seconds to look through this slide, and then we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about a few of them. So as designers of the curriculum, we're holding a lot of things at once, but essentially always going back to CRP and figuring out like, how are we ensuring academic success of our students, that there's cultural competence included within the lessons, and that it's supporting folks at different levels, right, with their knowledge, working knowledge of these aspects of CRP and social political consciousness as well. And so there's a number of ways that we do this, but particularly important are the ones in gray. And we say this because these are present throughout Y1 and Y2, and they're like in a spiraling manner. You will see these come up over and over within almost every zone in some way or another, or within every year in some way or another. And so it's important that we all have like a clear understanding of like what they are, how they show up, and why they're important, because they're sort of grounding our work within the curriculum towards CRP. And so in implementation, it means that absent of these in implementation, there will be tenets of CRP that may not be implemented in classrooms. And so we want to make sure that as a staff, we're understanding what those are, why they're there, and then being able to support our PDs in implementing these. So if I can get this to move, yeah. So Wake Up, Rise Above essentially is an opportunity for our fellows to really engage in social political consciousness, both in Y1 and Y2. They're done a little bit differently in each year, but it prompts our students to think about what is happening in my community, why is it happening, what's the impact, and what can I do about it? So starting to help them think about themselves as change agents and how broader issues that are happening within their community, whether that community is defined as their school, their city, their state, the country, what impact that has on them as individuals and how they can become change agents in that. We rely heavily on print, digital, or media resources, both in Y1 and Y2, in order to expose students to different issues or concerns that might be like occurring. And then they engage in an activity that with their cohort, and then they're asked to reflect upon what they're learning, what they're discussing, that sort of thing. Narrative 4, I think most of us might be familiar with this, but the partnership that we have around story exchanges and storytelling, it builds empathy, focuses on fellows' voice and story, and it's really a practice of vulnerability, right? You're sharing a story with one person, that person is then sharing your story with others, and it builds a number of skills, but we think that elevating fellow voice and building empathy is really at the core of this. It's included in almost every zone in Y1, and this is because we're building towards their personal statement, which is again a story sharing, right? It's telling my story. And so the idea behind that is that in Y1, they're getting practice sharing aspects of their story or different stories that matter to them. And then eventually when they get to the personal statement, they'll have practice sharing bits of their story. They'll have different stories to pull on, and hopefully that will help them then be able to write a personal statement that really matters to them. And it won't be the first time that they're asked to share something about themselves, because that can often seem very intrusive. And limiting, right? Like you're only asking me to tell you this one particular thing about who I am, but hopefully having this experience throughout the year will lessen that. In Y2, we'll continue to use narrative 4, but less so, and still TBD a little bit as we develop the last bit of zone 2, of Y2. So But we'll continue. They'll probably engage in a few exchanges throughout the year. And then participatory action research is something that is included in both Y1 and Y2. There are specific zones. This is where students basically identify something that matters to them. They go out, do some research, and then alongside with folks that are impacted by this issue or topic, try to implement or become engaged in some way, whether it's implementing a solution or just participating in some sort of event, doing something alongside with that identified community. And this happens in both years. Hopefully this year more folks will participate in Zone 6. There were some pacing issues in Y1, but, and then it's included as part of Zone 3 and Y2, which we're hoping that because it comes earlier in the year that everyone will be able to participate in that. Any high-level questions or thoughts about this content here? Okay. So in our groups, what we're going to do is we're going to dig a little deeper into how CRP, specifically around these structures and some others unique to Y2, are actually implemented in our different program years. So I'm going to break us out into 2 groups. And let's see if I can do this. So we'll do all right, so I have our Y1 group folks. So let's see if this works. Okay. That will leave us with our Y2 folks here. It's a small group of us today. Zandria, are you online?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. So it might just be us, which less helpful, but I feel like we need to do it so that folks we can record it for everybody.
Who are the numbers?
Sorry, say that again.
Which people are the numbers?
Which people are the numbers?
Oh, I have
you and Dusty.
Dusty is the 720 number. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're the other one, I think.
No, that's not me.
That's not you. Who else is on the line?
This is
You
Andy
see me,
Smith.
right?
I'm
Oh, sorry. Who else was there?
this is Andy Smith. I'm a new member on the NDM team and Patty's team. I'm just in transit right now, so just joining on the phone for right now.
Okay, excellent. Are you good with being in Y2, or would you like to be placed in Y1?
Y2 works just fine.
Okay, perfect. All right, so then there's like 5 of us. Z, do you want me to kick us off? Are you in a place where you can take over?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us, though?
Okay. Yes, I can. Sorry.
Okay.
A few things are happening. We stopped at a McDonald's, so I can tell all my business. We stopped at a McDonald's because we were getting to my talking part. So I think I'm switched over to McDonald's internet, and so that's why
Okay.
I wasn't quite sure what's going on. Yeah, let me show my face so you guys can see my pretty face.
There you are.
Yeah. I didn't want to see me when I'm driving. Yeah, I can get us started out.
What's up, Monisha? You?
All right. So basically, in this section, we're sort of continuing what Maria had emphasized in terms of ways that we're seeing CRP throughout the curriculum. And then I first want to talk about the three familiar structures from Y1 that you'll also see in Y2. So as she had highlighted, there's the wake up, rise above, there's the narrative 4 story exchange, and then the participatory action research. And just to highlight some things that are specific to Y2 for each, in wake up, rise above, one thing that we noticed, and this is particularly from feedback that we were getting, is that a lot of PDs just weren't able to get to the wake up, rise above lessons because there's pacing issues there, and so they were trying to prioritize. Okay, if there's anything I'm going to do, I need to get the curriculum done. So we thought that was just a real missed opportunity, and so what we did is we made sure that the wake up, rise above became incorporated into the lesson. And so therefore, as opposed to it being like a one-off thing, it's now within zone 1 of Y2, within zone 3, you'll find 2 days worth of lessons, and zone 2 more, where we're focusing on a particular issue that's relevant to their post-secondary journey. So for example, in zone 1, they're looking at identity-based post-secondary institutions, so like HBCUs or single-sex schools or Hispanic-based, I can't remember I forgot the full name for institutions. But so they looked at that, and then they have a second day of being able to write and reflect.
We lost you, Z. I don't know if you hit the mute button. Can anybody else hear him? No.
I can't anymore.
Yeah.
Did you miss all? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we could hear you now.
Did you miss all the other stuff?
The last thing I heard was I don't even know, incorporating it into the lessons. And day 2, like in day 2, they were going to be reflecting. That's the last thing I heard. Yeah.
Oh Lord. So my car keeps connecting to my car, my Bluetooth in my car. So I'll check it. Just let me know if you can't hear me again. Anyways, what I was I see Lydia. Anyways, what I was saying is on the second day, they're able to do that written reflection, which also accounts for that academic excellence piece. And so they're getting an opportunity to practice sustained writing, to practice reflecting on their thoughts in writing, similar to what they might be doing in certain post-secondary institutions. So those are some highlights about Wake Up, Rise Above. The second thing is a narrative for story exchanges. And as Maria already mentioned earlier, it's not necessarily playing a role in every zone as it had in the past as a build-up to personal statements, but it's still important and still is opportunities for the cohort to get to know each other, connect, and so you'll see it in zone 1. And then some other random logistical things is we've updated the lesson links for the narrative for story exchange lessons. I sent an email out to those of you who may be working with the Y2 curriculum for your region. And then just also a reminder, give a reminder to PDs to please complete the post-exchange forms to support our partnership. Because we do have a partnership with Narrative for folks, and one of the components of that partnership is giving them data, giving them feedback. So at the bottom now, in like the teacher tips section, at the very bottom, like after the lesson, it says for PDs, prompts PDs to complete the story exchange form. So if you can just, this is sort of a pushing an advertisement. If you could sort of just make sure that PDs are doing that just so we can continue our partnership with Narrative 4, because they do rely on the data for funding and whatnot. So that's a little plug in there. Then finally, there's the participatory action research that's going to happen in Y2 as well. It's going to happen in the second semester of Y1, in Y2, and the focus is going to be on answering the question, how my identity play a role in my post-secondary experience. So in Y1, it was more, I guess, I don't want to say, they had more options, whereas this one was more focused on one specific research question, as opposed to last time they just sort of create their own research questions around their community and things like that. So everything this year is more focused towards getting them in best position for their particular post-secondary experience. We'll really be thinking about more than just what they need to do to get there, but why they're there and what it could potentially look like for them. Can you do the next slide for me, please? All right. So what I want to focus on during this time are the experiences are going to be unique to Y2 that you won't see in well, you could see in Y1, especially with Google Classroom, but that we are definitely emphasizing in Y2. So the first thing is Google Classroom. That's sort of, we really thought about how it could focus on academic excellence. And the idea that we sort of want to mimic
Okay, sorry. Clearly my comment really threw Z off. I'll continue while he's dying laughing. So in Y2, we want to make sure that as they get nearer to their post-secondary experience, that we're doing everything that we can to help support them in that transition, and that a lot of times means exposing them to experiences that mimic what they'll experience. And so I think Z is able, can you now, can you jump in?
Yeah. So we wanted to mimic that experience, one of the potential post-secondary experiences there. And then the other thing is we also just wanted to give opportunity. We acknowledge that students have different learning modalities, all that good stuff, and they respond in different ways. And so we wanted to give several opportunities for students to participate. So if you're not that student who's always raising your hand and wanting to be in the discussion, being able to chat in your response or be able to continue to comment on a thread might be an additional way for you to be able to participate. And the other thing that we wanted to address, specifically in Y2, was this idea of thinking of contemplative practices in relation to socio-political consciousness. I think a lot of times, and I think Monique, who's in our group right now, has constantly emphasized, made a great point. And even in observations that when I was in New York in a school talking to some PDs, a lot of the time they were talking about how these seniors and juniors are just really nervous. You know, it's just like really like, oh man, I'm about to do some big things here. You know, and so we wanted to make sure that we added a component of like, okay, let's step back and think about your health. Let's think about your body, how you're feeling, and really incorporate some contemplative practice, because that in itself is sort of a socio-political act in terms of like, you know, taking care of yourself, understanding how our world impacts our health, you know, and it impacts who we are. And, those are some of our thoughts around including contemplative practices, especially as they're stressing out, trying to figure out possible funding and things like that. If you would go ahead and click, and then actually, Maria, you'll guide us in learning a little bit about Google Classroom.
Hey Z, Maria, can I ask you a quick question? And you may not have the answer, and this may be parking lotted.
Yeah.
But in our CRP learning, we're doing a lot of work around research questions. And I'm curious if you all have a specific definition of identity, if that's changed from last year, or if you have like a definition. And if not, that's okay.
Yeah.
At this point, okay.
Yeah, I don't know that. I think what we use as our basis for identity is like the intersectionality map that we used in Y1. And so thinking of your identity as being multifaceted and including all those components to make up who you are. But we haven't, I don't know that we've explicitly said that anywhere, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think it's in it's potentially in the glossary too, as I think about it. There's like a document with I don't know if it's in that, but it potentially could be in that one goal glossary.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't think it is
Oh,
there, but
no.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
But it should be. Good addition that we need to make to it, probably. Yeah.
Well, Dusty, Suzanne, myself will probably begin with y'all. So
Okay.
no, that's great. It's okay.
Yeah.
Cheers. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So wanted to take a couple of minutes to do a quick demo because I know that Google Classrooms could be something that is new for PDs and DTSs. And so wanted to share a couple of things, particularly in the way that we're asking our PDs to use Google Classroom. So Google Classroom, and we're going to provide with a bunch of resources, can do a lot of things. It's actually really cool. But we're specifically asking within the curriculum for a couple of ways to use it. And so at the very minimum, providing PDs with the support and training in order to do those things will be important. So the first thing to know is it's quite easy to create or to join a class. And so PDs will be asked to create their class. Once they create a class, they'll be brought in and they'll be able to have students join one of two ways. Students can either enter this code as part of going to Google Classroom and then entering a code for joining a class, or PDs can add students pretty quickly using their one goal email, right? So I added Zandrio, and what happens is if you're using one goal, or in some regions you might need to use your school-based one, but it'll automatically pull up people in your address book. So it should be a quick, easy add for students, for teachers to add students. Once you add students, they'll have access to it. And the two main things that we ask teachers to do, or PDs to do, are to use it for do nows. And so instead of having it be on the board or having to create handouts or anything like that, they can create do nows. And so they would create a question. Usually it's some sort of question. I created an example here. So let's do edit. You can post whatever question you want for the do now, give additional instructions. You can add a document if it's read an article and then answer this question, or review this website and answer this question. You can do all of that here. You can set a due date for when it's due, how many points, and then save it, and then it's assigned. Students would then see the question come up on their stream, and then they can respond to it. So here, Zandrio and Dusty have both responded to my question. Clearly, Zandrio is modeling some behavior problems that might come up when you're dealing with this. So then you can easily assign a grade. So for Dusty, I might say, she completed it. She had a really thought out answer. But in the return, the part of the direction was that she needed to respond to someone, right? So I might say to get 100, please respond to a classmate. And so then I would return it to her. She would get the note, the feedback, the grade's automatically there, and then she would be prompted to please respond to another student. I can go back and change the grade. Zandrio might get a lower grade given his response, and might need to give him a different set of feedback, but could do that and move it along, right? So that's one way to do questions. Let me go back. The other thing we ask PDs to do quite a bit is to create an assignment through Google Classroom. And what is really neat about this is that it, you no longer need to make copies. It creates the documents for the students in a really neat way. And so I can go to here. Let's see, can I edit this? I guess I can't. Can I edit this one? Yeah. So when you're creating a document, you can give it a title, include whatever directions you want, link whatever it is that you're linking. And so this is the handout that we have for students in terms of selectivity. And so PDs will have a option of saying students can view a file, they can edit the file, which probably we never want all students in one file, so you wouldn't really use this, or make a copy for each student. Once you do that, you can assign it. Again, do a due date. Let's say we wanted the due date to be for, I don't know, later in the week. You can add links, videos, whatever it is you want, you assign it. It will automatically show up for the students. And then what I want to show you is, it's been assigned. It shows that it's been assigned for students. And I can go to the folder. And so now in my drive, I have Dusty's assignment, Zondrayo's assignment, whoever else is in my class, and I'll be able to quickly just review everybody's assignment individually. And so they have their own copy. They can type in there. You don't need to like create copies, hard copies. And it's all organized by assignment and by person. And so that's just like a quick, easy way how do I get back? For them to do that. Here we go. So those are the two like ways where we mostly ask PDs to use their Google Classroom, but there's lots of other cool things that Google Classroom can do. And I've seen PDs, for example, here I have like a scholarship announcement. Teachers can send out links to scholarship announcements or to anything that they might want to just share out as, you know, with students and share with them. So it is a really neat Blackboard simulator that PDs can use. I'll bring us back here. Any questions?
Maria, I just also wanted to note that as a student, the assignment that you gave us and the question both show up because they have due dates in my calendar. Like on my calendar, there's a part that's reminding me about that question or reminding me about a due date. So just so you all know that that's available for students who are using the calendar for the GC.
And I think I might need to refresh this, but as a teacher, it shows up as well. I don't know if it's going to show up now, but I saw it come up like when I assigned the due date for the whatever, it showed up on my calendar as like reminder this assignment is due. So it ties to Google Classroom as well. I mean, Google Calendar as well. Yeah. All right, let's go back here. And we've included a number of resources here that I think could be really helpful for DTSs and PDs. One thing that I did as a DTS was I created a Google Classroom for my PDs, and that's where I would share any resources or decks from PDCs, just basically anything so that way they were also getting like that experience from a student side and can use that to help them determine how they might best use it with their fellows. So that's something that I would recommend folks doing as well. A couple of features that are really neat that I think could be helpful. There's a grading tool. So there's a whole grade book. You can keep all your grades and then export them to Excel and quickly like put them into whatever format your school might require you to do. You can add instructors to each classroom. So when we're thinking about collecting student work or thinking about how to, support our PDs through the engagement of student work, if they add their DTSs as an instructor, the DTSs will automatically be able to view student work. And so it just becomes one less step in terms of like collecting student work or giving access or finding copies or doing any of that. There's also a function where they can share information with guardians. Z, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like I haven't gotten as much as info.
Yeah, basically you can sign the student's guardian in, and then it gives them not all the information, but it'll update them on grades, update them on assignments, and I think you can sort of adjust the level of information that the parents get. So it automatically will send stuff out to parents as well, so they can stay connected in what their students doing in that one Google classroom or parent guide.
Yeah. So as you all probably know, we are always trying to find ways to engage parents more. And so this could be like another way that we consider, like, how do we bring families in? What could this look like? And then there's a bunch of videos and resources that folks can access. I'm going to move us on, just looking at the time.
Do we have enough time to do the activity?
I think we'll have just enough time to do the activity.
Okay. So if what you all do for me, so what we're going to be doing now is first switching gears. So first we're talking about global classroom. Now we're focusing on contemplative practice. So what I would appreciate is if you all would click on that link, mute your faces so you can fully participate that and not have to worry about everyone else looking at your face. You can mute your faces and then participate in that guided breathing exercise, and then we'll come back in 3 minutes. It's exactly a 3-minute long video. All right, so I'll see you all in 3 minutes.
Hey, Y1 team, welcome back. Could you, where did you all end? Do you need a little bit more time to, like, if I gave you 5 more minutes together, would you, or Rachel?
Oh, thanks. I mean, we were cut off of Wake Up, Rise Above, and so we're okay because we had gone over some of those things there, and it was only what we were going to talk about in terms of like adding the resources was for only Zach. So we're cool, unless Y2 needs more time.
We could use more time, but yeah, I don't know if y'all want to break back out. I was trying to change it, but apparently.
Dang, girl, that's why you were too fancy with Zoom.
Well, apparently Zoom is like, nah, you said 30 minutes. That's all you get. So, but I think I can recreate.
Maria, I think it's okay if we watch whatever you guys are going to do. Yeah, because it was mostly just data solutions people who are in learning, so I think it's okay.
Okay, excellent. So what I'll do is I'll do a quick recap of where we are so that y'all can bring in. So essentially, one of the ways that we're incorporating CRP specifically into Y2 is around contemplative practices. So we're bringing this new practice in. And so we're engaging in like what this could look like individually. So, and then are going to do a quick reflection around what that felt like for us and what that could mean. And I'm going to actually go back a couple of screens. So when we're thinking specifically about social political consciousness, one thing that we heard from folks in terms of feedback and also from PDs and staff members is that we're uncovering a lot, right? Like there is some heavy topics that we're engaging in with our fellows, and so there is an impact of doing that on your body and your mental health. And so we wanted to make sure that we're not just introducing fellows to all these concepts and to like awakening them to a ton of things and then not giving them some strategies to help them like deal with that or to like recognize that what this can do to you. And senior year already is a stressful year regardless, and then to add on like a layer of like identity work and social political consciousness is a lot. And so this is one way that we are trying to address that, to sort of balance both the like awakening them to it and then helping them take care of themselves. So Zandwaya, I'll toss it back over to you. Oops.
And so it's okay for us to finish off where we were in our breakout?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Yeah, so for those of you who participated in the guided breathing exercise with us over in Y2, just have a few questions for you. So how did you feel before doing the exercise? And then how did you feel after? Let's start with those two questions. So if a few Y2 folks would just share your thoughts, then maybe appreciate it. Any takers in the Y2 group? I can share quickly. I was personally feeling pretty stressed out because I was trying to make sure I had connectivity for this meeting, and we're driving, we're on the road. So I realized as I was in the middle of a very distracting McDonald's that actually closing my eyes and like taking it seriously, because I told myself I'm going to take it seriously and do it, actually was very calming, and I felt sort of the anxiety that was sort of building up in me and like trying to make all this thing happen sort of go away. So it's actually a pretty good feeling to have done that in the middle of McDonald's. There's even a point where she's like, don't let yourself be distracted. And I was like, oh, let me come back, so I can share. I know we don't have a ton of time, but maybe one more person share it out, and then we can focus on the second two questions.
I can share. I was in the Y2 group. Yeah, so for me, I feel like contemplative practices are things that I feel like I know that there's scientific research behind the benefits of breathing exercises, mindfulness, meditation, and it's something that I always want to do more of. And so I was just grateful to have 3 minutes to be able to do it during my workday, and like gave myself permission to do it. So yeah, I feel like after that, I was just like, why don't I do this more often? So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And I think the first two questions are especially important because we're asking this of our fellows. So I think it's important for us to experience it ourselves, to see what it feels like, because we're going to be asking this of our fellows. And it's important to know what the possible impact can be. So my second two questions are, what is the impact contemplative practice can have on fellows? And then what would it require from us as DPSs, as OG staff, to ensure that that impact is achieved. We can take a few moments, and since everyone, Y1, Y2, has sort of been part of this conversation, you can feel free to chime in as well, Y1 folks, on answering those second two questions. And thank you, Paul, for sharing, which reminded me that if you also wanted to include your answer in the chat, I appreciate you taking advantage of that. A lot of responses on the chat talking about self-regulation and self-care and showing that we care about the whole fellow. Would anyone like to share out either orally or through the chat on that second question? So if this is the impact that we can potentially have, what does it require from us? And what does it require for us to support a PD?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with like what it looks like in the like actual like curriculum and lessons, but like any time that you can make something like a procedure or routine where it's like every Friday or at this time, like the school that I used to work at the year before I got there, they did an actual like they called it 10 at 10, which is 10 minutes of guided meditation at 10 o'clock over the loudspeaker. So you kind of like have to do it because it's, you know, like it's going on there. But that was like something that people knew about. So like if you know that it's like consistent, then as opposed to like kind of just like interspersed here and there, I think that just makes it a lot easier to implement.
Yeah, that's a great point, Zach, because I think help supporting PDs building. So in the curriculum for the fall semester of Y2, it shows up pretty regularly, and there's like there's lots of different types of contemplative practices, right? From meditation, different types of meditation, right? That they can partake in. And that's done pretty consistently, and then it sort of tapers off. But I wonder, like, how do we support PDs, like starting something where it's consistently in the curriculum, and then something that just builds into their regular practice. So maybe it's not done as often, but it's still, you know, every Friday or every whatever so often that they incorporate it, I think would be key.
Yeah, it just makes me think about like ensuring that PDs deeply understand the why behind this, because I feel like there are so many things that are going to be required that need to be done that feel much more like we need to do this now and urgent, especially in Y2, and like why taking this space is so important. And so, yeah, it's just deeply connected to like the whole child and what you need to be able to do those other things. It's like a foundational belief or like an understanding of like, it's almost like a philosophy, but like the why, yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that, Lydia, because I think that when we're supporting PDs, like helping them understand that will be key. We've included a couple of articles here. They're also in the curriculum as well. But depending on where you are in your own journey or like your own beliefs, like this might be, for some, it might feel like really weird or like they might not be comfortable or whatever it is, right? And so I think there's an important role that we can play in sharing like the actual science that comes behind it and like the evidence or the research base that like supports doing these types of things in classrooms, right? From yoga practices to meditation, all of that, the benefits of it and the science behind it, I think will be key, in, especially for some PDs who it might just be new to them, or they might be resistant in some way. And so helping them understand the why and the research behind it will definitely be helpful.
All right, should we go ahead and move forward with
Yes.
the regional? Great.
Yeah.
So the regional collaboration open Q&A, and we sort of talked about this last time, but we really want to emphasize that one of the great parts about the Learning Lab space is the opportunity for regions to collaborate together, to work together, to ask questions out loud, to sort of problem solve with one another, as well as the curriculum team and curriculum coaching team. So we're not going to have any setup questions this time. We just sort of want to open it up for anyone who has questions, especially at the New Year's beginning, and you might have things on your mind that you want to ask about. So it's just open Q&A time that you can ask us, you can ask other people in the region, whatever.
Zach, did you get your question answered about why 2 slides? Did I miss that? You did?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
I did have a question like about the narrative 4, because I know that like there has been like, you know, pretty extensive partnership, and that like there has been some trainings, but if like as a like what level, as someone like pretty new, would I kind of need to like have, or what would you suggest, like based on like people that have implemented it and also just like the other knowledge? Because I think some people on my team have done the training, so I don't know if I need to do like a ton of training, or just like reach out to them. And then like, you know, like I think it's like their stuff is pretty exhaustive. So just kind of like picking what is going to be most helpful in terms of like thinking about communicating stuff to PDs.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would, for you specifically, Zach, I would reach out to Michael, because he attended our first training. And so I don't know if y'all are planning on doing like a PDC. So I think there's like, you can do something on staff, right? But I think there's also an opportunity for you to just join like whatever PDC or whatever training y'all will be providing for your Y1 PDs around narrative 4. And you can participate in that as well. And I think that would that would be probably enough. It's not a difficult protocol, but it is something that I do think it's important to just to participate in it, to get a sense of what it could look like and feel like. We've tried to like curate like whatever materials are most important around narrative 4 within the curriculum. And so in terms of the toolkit itself, like they do have a lot in there, but I would say, you know, once you participate in it and have a better sense of what it looks like in the curriculum, then if there's something that you see like, oh, this would have been helpful for me, right? But then like sharing those tidbits. But PDs can also join once they participate in like a formal training from like in a PDC from your region. They're able to join like have a newsletter that just comes right to them, and then they can sort through some of that as well. I don't know if others have other thoughts that they would add to that.
Yeah, one thought that I had, and I was wondering if there's other, I'm not sure if Monique is still on this call, other regions already implemented in Y1 last year. But I feel like I heard some feedback around some PDs sort of feeling like the protocols at times got redundant, or they felt like they didn't need to necessarily do them all. And so I would, if possible, sort of if possible, sort of emphasize the idea that the narrative 4 story changes are meant both to build community and give opportunities for fellows to be vulnerable and continue to talk one another and get to know one another and empathize with one another, and also help them articulate their story and figure out what their story is and what their journey is like. So sort of emphasizing that it is pretty important for them to participate in the narrative for story exchanges because they're all unique in their own way as they go through the zones, and sort of somehow playing up the importance of the aspect, because I think in some ways people might not see, it might seem redundant, whereas it has the potential to be very impactful.
Any other questions, whether about the content we've covered today or just, yeah, just anything happening on the ground that y'all would want to thought partner on or have folks share their experiences on?
Hey, Sean, not to put you on the spot, and then feel free to not answer it if you don't want to, but I saw you join. I was just wondering, did you have any experiences you wanted to share about narrative 4? In terms of like what would be helpful for PDs to know and or to make it a valuable experience for them.
Was there some more context? You said you saw something that we did? Sorry,
no, I was just saying, so Zach had asked just about narrative 4, and I can't remember his exact question, but there wasn't a ton of regional representation from people who had implemented it. So I was wondering if you had any, Zach, I can't remember exactly what your question was, and we can move on if it's not that important, if you feel good enough already, but just if you had any insight into what the narrative 4 experiences was like for your cohort. Sorry about why it's so loud.
No, it's okay. I don't have a lot of like first-hand experiences, like secondhand. I never was in a classroom last year that was while they're actually doing the narrative for class. We actually did do it as part of our PDC, though. As part of our PDC last week, we did a version of narrative 4 with our PDs, and I think that was really powerful. And we didn't do it last year at PDC, at the opening PDC. So I think one of the things that it sparked from a lot of the comments from our survey is our PDs, I think, now have a better understanding of like how it looks and feels to experience it, and are like more excited, especially ones who are returning to bring it into their classrooms, and even the ones who are new to narrative. So that's one learning, but I didn't actually see it in action in our New York classrooms last year because I wasn't in class during those lessons.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before we move on? All right, so let's see how this works. I was able to create a poll last minute, so let's see if I can actually launch it. Okay, if y'all would take a few minutes to just complete this poll for us, that would be really great. We're hoping to learn from your responses here and continue to just evolve this space as we go along. I'm trying, Zach. You should have seen me scrambling to make a new one, which is why there's I only wrote strongly agree and strongly disagree, and was like, I think folks will figure out what the scale is moving forward. Okay, I think we've got about 8 respondents. I'm trying to see how many folks are on the call that are not facilitators. I feel like there's a bunch of us. So 2, 3, 4. Okay, I think we've got everyone actually. But I'll leave it open for another minute or so if you haven't completed it and you'd like to. I'd really appreciate you doing so. And while the poll is still open, just want to encourage folks to come. We are really excited about our new format, and the more folks that are there, the more we can learn about how to continue to tweak it and make it just like more relevant to what's happening on the ground and how we can support you in this process. So yeah, so please encourage folks to come. We'll be back on our regular cadence starting next week. So there will be another Learning Lab next week, but then it'll go back to every other one. Strong plug, it'll be around our pillars of fellow success. So you'll get insight more on how they were developed, what they mean, outcomes that we're hoping to reach with them. And then that will lead into an intro for the pillar survey, and so there'll be more info on that, and it's going to be part of a larger series as we're like really diving into the pillars, the survey, and the learnings that we're having from them. So please join, please ask other folks to join. I think it'll be really great, and it's an awesome collaboration amongst a number of teams within NPT to make sure that we're really utilizing this space well and this time well, and really giving you sort of an arc of learning as it pertains to the pillars of fellow success. So definitely join, ask others to join, that sort of thing. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you so much for being a part of our time here today. We really appreciate it, and we're going to continue to grow and learn, and hopefully, Zoom won't delete our links next time, and all sorts of things will happen. So yeah, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye, team.